Welcome back to KTN Prime. We want to evaluate Kenya's political landscape, taking a look at the push and pull in the August House and the realignments, even as Jubilee puts its house in order ahead of the 2027 general election. Let's start with the latest developments that have played out in the 13th Parliament. As you know, despite a court ruling on February 7th, Speaker Moses Wetangula said the status quo of the House leadership on the majority and minority side remains. Azimio, in a quick rejoinder through its parliamentary leadership, promised that it will be noisy, messy, and there will be casualties. I'm now joined by Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, a high-ranking member of the Azimio la Umoja coalition. So SG, thanks for your time. Karibu sana to our studios.
Thank you, Santi. Thank you for the invite.
Let's just relook that court ruling that declared Azimio la Umoja the majority coalition in the National Assembly. Briefly, how impactful was this decision in regards to curbing the rampant party hopping we've witnessed?
This is a case that has been on since, I think, 2023, yes. And we kept saying it's going to be the most consequential case or judgment if it went our way.
Okay.
And true to it, it's the one that has actually impacted on the governance of this country than any other thing that has happened since 2022, perhaps outside the Gen Z demonstrations. And it set quite a number of issues clear. One is it allowed those who want to understand it. There was an opportunity to compare what is more supreme, the supremacy of the Constitution vis-a-vis the supremacy of Parliament.
Okay.
And the judges, and I was seated in the courtroom when they were delivering the judgment, were very clear that in our country, it is the supremacy of the Constitution. Unlike countries like South Africa, where there is supremacy of Parliament. And that is why, in my opinion, Wetangula missed the point. Because the thing was, it is the Kenyans who determine which side is the majority and which side is the minority at the ballot. And you cannot engineer party hopping within the term. From one side to the other, you cannot entice like it's been happening since the beginning of this term. And that is very clear. If you again want to change that position that Kenyans determined on the 9th of August 2022, you will need to go back to them and get the voting. So and this is why I think, if you read between the lines, this is why Wetangula was unable, together with the officers that may have helped him, they were unable to say that those whom you are saying left Azimio, which coalition did they go to? Because if they had said they went to UDA, like it has been the case all through, and the claim that they had in court, that is the argument that they had in court, then the requirement would have been, can you now proceed for by-elections? So to help them out, he said they are here, somewhere in between independence and something.
Let's take a look.
And I can tell you that I'm sure Wetangula put himself in a very awkward
Well,
fix.
according to Azimio, they're threatening an impeachment. But according to the Speaker Wetangula, Kenya Kwanza has 165 members. Azimio has 154 members based on the information that was relayed to him by the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. So who's fooling who? What contradictions has Wetangula made in bearing in mind the ruling that was made by the courts?
And on the same note, before I come to what you have asked,
yes,
up to yesterday, Wetangula had always maintained that Jubilee is not part of Azimio. But he has found himself in a quagmire. He's caught in a very messy. No wonder Junet is saying this thing is going to be messy. So yesterday, all of a sudden, he comes and says Jubilee is in Azimio. And he had recognized them as a parliamentary party that is not within Azimio. So you can actually see all these contradictions.
Maybe it's because of that court ruling.
And it is. It's actually because of the court ruling. Because the court ruling did not give him an opportunity to interpret the judgment. His was to implement the judgment. How I wish he first of all implemented and recognized Junet as the majority leader. Maybe for even 45 minutes. And then said he has new information. But when he takes it upon himself to interpret and apply the court ruling the way he thinks, that I think is correct, is already being contemptuous of the court judgment.
And giving a hint that...
I'm sure we are yet to see many things. Mambo inagojea EU ikwishe, alafu watu wapambane.
It might get messy. So you're sort of pointing to a point that Wetangula, in his judgment, he was a judge, jury, and executioner, as simple as that. But in terms of the data from the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, are you saying that the office itself, the data is compromised? Because according to the data that was handed to the Speaker, you seem to be the minority.
No, I would want to see the data myself. Remember, when the judges were delivering the ruling, they said no evidence was produced in court to support the allegations by Wetangula. There was no document that was ever produced in court to show that the Uda people were more than Azimio. And they were saying this was just a mere statement. He alleged it in his statement when in his ruling in parliamentary, he alleged this when he was making his ruling in Parliament, 2023 or 2022 thereabout. But when he did an affidavit in court, he never attached any of those documents. He just, it was just mere statements. And yesterday again, he says he has evidence from the ORPP.
Well, we'll wait and see. There's an appeal cooking. But I have to ask you this. Since Jubilee is a constituent party of Azimio, have 5 splinter parties severed their ties with the Azimio coalition and signed a post-election pact with Kenya Kwanza?
I am not aware of either,
yes,
but I am aware of pronouncements that have been made by a number of those who are in Azimio, that we are leaving. Some of them are as old as the day we voted. But to take the legal steps, perhaps 1 or 2, I need to check that again.
Okay.
As to whether they have gotten into any other coalition agreement with any other group, again, something I do not know, but I doubt. If they had, that would have been one of the things that they would have been very happy to flag. However, the courts also seem to have to imply that if you left this coalition and went and joined another, you should have gone back to the people. Because that decision was made by Kenyans. The supremacy of the Kenyan voter, the supremacy of the Kenyans, the supremacy of Kenyans is what the court was saying. Don't think that you can play around with it depending on how you feel and who you think you can work with this. And I really think it's a really, it's a crucial judgment that we got, because it also seems to reinforce at what point do you, those who are familiar with the minor case ruling at the Supreme Court, it looks like it was also going towards that side. And I think we are in a better position now than we were before this judgment. Even as we go to elections, maybe 2027, whatever the date, we'll wait for the IEBC to tell us what they have in mind.
Okay.
These judgments are helping us organize and manage ourselves better as we go along, even if we are not able to deal with the mess in Parliament now.
But let's talk about dealing with this mess, because the Azimio parliamentary leadership claimed that they have withdrawn their membership from the crucial House Business Committee. And it seemed to be an effort in futility, because listening to Speaker Wetangula, he referred to Standing Order 68. As an experienced legislator, is this another contradiction, or it was already water under the bridge once the nominees' names were given?
If, you see, you see, there are a couple of other developments that are known to you and to everybody else within Azimio, moving to the broad-based, others not being the broad-based. That is also compromising how you or how they behave or how the entire team behaves when they are on the floor. But in the words of Junet, if a party then withdraws its membership from those committees, the functioning of Parliament will certainly be impacted upon. And if I were Wetangula, I can never be, I would use a different approach. That high-handedness thing may not help him. I think it is better to try and navigate, negotiate. himself out of the jam that he's getting himself in, because it's a really serious issue.
Now, Azimio is
if I don't want to talk about Azimio, because really, if ODM was to remain faithful to that ruling and also remain faithful to the mandate that was given to us by Kenyans, and Kenyans said we are giving the executive to KK, but you are giving the legislature to Azimio. That's a decision of it's balancing, checks and balances. Sure. That's the way Kenyans decided to give to manage the affairs of this country for 5 years. So Wetangula cannot then, fight himself and give himself all those powers and take them away from Kenyans. And it's really a little annoying to see him trying to do that.
So what's the next step? You mentioned earlier
it would have been very tidy. Let me tell you, it would have been very, just to follow the judgment, allow Parliament to be managed by those in the majority, and the executive to negotiate with them. If that was to happen, my thinking would be that one thing that would not have happened, would not have gotten to that very controversial finance bill that ended up with young people being killed. Because then, as Azimio would have stuck our guns and said, these kind of expenses, these kinds of taxation, we are not going to allow them on the floor.
Sure.
We were in a better position if we had the majority position, because the executive will not pass anything without negotiating with the majority, because they're in a minority. You have seen it happen in the US.
True.
But when you then sacrifice that on that altar, and Wetangula wants to really take it away, what you are doing is actually handing over Kenyans to just one arm of government that has already shown, they have not been very kind in the way they have managed our affairs. People are complaining. So if you have a payslip, you are looking for somebody to rescue the payslip.
You just got personal, yeah. So I have to ask, is there political goodwill to impeach the Speaker of the National Assembly?
I don't know whether we are. It is one of the cards that when you are in Parliament, you use it also. It's a negotiating tool. You don't do things properly, we are going to impeach you. So whether they make it or it's just a threat, again, we leave it to members of Parliament.
Interesting. So, and you raise this because Azimio finds itself in a precarious situation. Why? Azimio is crying foul that their broad-based partners are a little bit unfaithful, quote unquote. MPs claim they don't see any broad-based action in Parliament. This coming after reports surfaced that the majority and minority leaders were summoned to State House. I think it was yesterday evening. Do you see the presence of President William Ruto in this whole debacle? What do you make of the summons?
When you are in the executive, I haven't sat in the executive in a manner that William Ruto and others are sitting. But when you are in that executive arm, your desire is to manage every other person who is available to be managed. So if you can be able to manipulate Parliament, and Parliament is readily available to be manipulated in that manner, you blame those who have accepted to be manipulated. You blame the members of Parliament. Every person running State House would want to have his or her agenda passed by Parliament. And you negotiate with them depending on how they have come to negotiate. But if they are freely willing to just everything that you pass to pass, you have the people you blame on this account are members of Parliament. They were given a mandate by Kenyans, and they have the protection of the Constitution. But they have chosen to go down to State House and offer themselves for whatever they are doing and sacrifice the mandate that was given to them by Kenyans.
So will Azimio make it to 2027? You seem to be pulling in different directions.
The coalition is done for a given period. And this was for 5 years. If we are there together 2027, it cannot be the Azimio coalition. Could be coalition, the same as Azimio, but at the negotiated coalition agreement. This was for a 5-year term. So what comes out of the 2027 arrangements, it could end up with the same, I doubt. It could end up with other coalitions. So certainly there will be other coalitions because that is the way to go in this country. But Azimio as a coalition will be there for 5 years because it's a legal arrangement. It's a legal marriage that we are in.
Okay.
Yeah. Wengine wataregarega huku waende atembee akuje arudi. Like this judgment, it was delivered to a different Azimio, not the Azimio that was there 2022.
Yeah.
But it's also good to recognize and to thank Wakili Kibe Muigai. He led a team of Gen Z's lawyers, and they were able to deal with all the other lawyers from their side. And then Ken Jiro and Lempa, who were the petitioners, because this was a public interest thing.
Okay.
And we really need to thank them. They stood for the supremacy of the supremacy of the Constitution, and they defended the will of Kenyans on their own account without anybody paying them. Many of those lawyers who were there were doing it pro bono. And I really thank those Kenyans.
Okay, well, it's a matter that will still be in the corridors of justice since they hinted at an appeal. We'll wait and see. But Jeremiah Kioni, kindly stay with us. We'll be back with this conversation at exactly 10 p.m. He'll be around as we take a look at what next for Jubilee Party. I'm sure you've heard that they endorsed Fred Matiang'i to be their presidential candidate in 2027. Is this the end of that dream of one united opposition to face against President William Ruto? Well, we'll be delving into those matters in just but a few, but coming up.